Yay!
Yay!
Season 3. Season 3. Season 3. Oh my goodness. We're here.
Hello. We have arrived
Hello,
to season 3. We
everyone.
took a little break, but I'm so excited to be back. All right, so shall we get started with our episode 3 today? Or not episode, what am I saying? We're a little rusty. Should we get started with
Yeah.
season 3, episode 1?
Yes. Sounds good.
Currently, it is 8 o'clock in Seoul. I'm dialing in from Seoul. And so I'm having breakfast. I'm having my typical fruits and vegetables and hard-boiled eggs or soft-boiled eggs. And then because we're recording samcha, I have to have a drink, right? So I went to the convenience store downstairs and got Jeju ale. And I'm going to open it and drink this at 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear it?
Yes. Such a good sport, Christine.
I mean, who doesn't like to drink beer at 8 in the morning? Yum. And look at this packaging. It's cute, right?
So
Look at them.
pretty. It's
Yeah.
very
So cute.
samcha. Has green.
So
I love it.
so samcha.
I've got also a can that has some like nice green on it. It's called Giant Hard Kombucha, but the Giant is
I
spelled
just
with a
got
J.
that today.
Oh, really? I got it at Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
It is passion fruit and elderflower.
Yum.
I'm gonna try it right now because I've never tried it before. It's good. It's like light. I like it.
Nice.
It's good. It's good. Very
Yum.
mild. And then my snack is kind of weird, but I'm having these like lemon pesto potatoes that I cooked with like garlic and spices and stuff on the stove.
Excuse me. That
Yeah,
sounds so good.
because I am a potato queen, so that is my snack.
Very true. Potato queen indeed. Okay, so I'm drinking this Chilean orange wine that Rita, shout out Rita, shout out Saturday Table, so many Saturdays. She had brought over the last time she was here, so I'm just drinking the rest of that. It's very good, very crisp, very dry, very good. And then I'm also enjoying some kettle corn.
Yummy.
So
Is it Boon Sugar Pop?
it is.
Oh,
It's so
it's the
good.
best. I love it.
It's so good. It's very, very good. Okay, so today we are just diving right in to a topic that I think, talk about a lot throughout samcha and different episodes. And then today's episode is titled, Am I Dying? Dun, 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 dun. We're going to talk a little bit about like health anxieties, health scares, like death. It's going to go real deep, per usual.
But yeah, so speaking of going deep, we're gonna go through our typical 3 rounds of samcha. Samcha, of course, means round 3, so we're gonna eat and drink throughout and share and talk and just have a great time while talking about if we're dying or not. So,
Dying.
with that, let's go into ircha. So cheers!
Cheers.
Let's start off just by talking about any health anxieties that we have. And I think let's think of it in the lens of like we're in our 30s now. And I think just physical health realities become more real. Anyway, but yeah, what are some like anxieties you've had about your health in more recent years?
Recently, like in Korea, I've been sleeping, like my sleep schedule has been like off for the entire year, for like the past year. And so I know how important sleep is, and I'm trying to get better at sleeping, but I think I'm like averaging 4 to 5 hours a night, and I know that's not good. So I know that these habits will probably accumulate like and turn into something awful down the line. So I'm trying to fix it now.
Well, sleep is interesting because I know like usually when people get older, but I'm talking about like old, like they can't sleep. They don't sleep for as long, right? So that's kind of scary because it's like, oh, if we're not like getting our sleep when we're in our 30s, like it's not necessarily gonna get better because we're gonna like, I remember when I lived with my grandpa, like he would sleep like 4 hours maybe, but like that was all he could sleep. Like he couldn't sleep more than that. And interestingly, like in the past several years, I'm not at that level, but like I always wake up like at least once in the middle of the night between like 1 and 4 a.m.
Is it to pee? Do you wake up in the middle of the night to pee?
Sometimes it's to pee, but then other times I just like I just like wake up. I don't know why. Sometimes it's a dream. Sometimes it's just
Something to ask your
random.
therapist.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let me take note of that. But yeah, that's like sleep is I'm not a good sleeper, but I don't really have the same excuse as Christine because she is like in Korea right now working US hours. So that's why she's not getting good sleep. I just am a terrible person.
No.
And I also feel like the 30s is, again, going to use the word, but it's a very interesting time
Mhm.
because it's like,
We need a drink
it's
every
kind
time
of
we
like,
say interesting.
All
yeah,
right,
yeah.
cheers.
It's like,
Everyone play
cheers.
along.
It's kind of like this in between time. Well, I mean, maybe the 40, 50, 60, 70-year-olds out there would see that and laugh, but it kind of feels like this in between time where you like still feel kind of invincible, but then also at the same time you're slowly starting to feel the effects of some of the
Yeah.
indiscretions of your youth, you know? And so it's like a very weird and interesting
Nope.
time.
Oh, there we go. Do you remember the last time you got a really good night's sleep and like what were the conditions that allowed you to have this good sleep?
Ooh, probably when I
I
was
do, but I can't say.
oh.
Yes, you can.
R-rated,
Why
X-rated.
not?
Wow, you went there. Okay, okay.
I was gonna say probably when I had a cold like a few weeks ago, and then I
Oh
just
my
like
God.
literally slept for like 12 hours. But it was a nice sleep, I have to say. I took NyQuil.
Oh, NyQuil.
Yeah, probably also on vacation, but not
Hmm.
the first night, not the first couple of
Yeah.
nights because you're in like a new
Yeah.
place and you're still excited. But then, in the middle of the week,
Mm,
that's when you get good sleep.
same. Same girl. All right, next topic.
Next, we're talking about health anxieties and stuff, and there's one that like has just been this like lingering anxiety that just comes here and there since I was like 20. Like so literally like a decade. It's because so what happened is I know someone who died very young because she had like they discovered later she had a blood clot like in her leg, and then it like traveled up and like you know caused her to pass away. And I think I don't know like all of the details around it. That's kind of as far as I know. I think like also the conditions were like she wasn't like walking around a lot like that day or that week. And so, like when you're on an airplane too, it's like you're supposed to wear
Mm,
compression socks and like that kind of thing. So it's like in that kind of area. So anyway, ever since then, like every now and then I'm like lying in bed or like if I'm sitting for a long time, I just like start massaging my calves because I just get this anxiety that like I can feel like something in my legs. It's like totally hypochondriac of me. But yeah, that's like I've never like vocalized this, but it's always just like it
mm.
just pops up randomly for me. But I wonder like have either of you had an experience where like something happened to someone and it's like it opened this door of possibility and like how if that's affected you or not? Christine's face is like
Oh my
I think
goodness.
yes, because I think about it from like a genes perspective. So there were some illnesses in my family, well, just like one. And so because there's like illnesses are could be potential or because illnesses are linked to your genes and like family stuff, um, I worry about that. It's like, oh, when my stomach hurts, my uncle passed away with intestinal cancer, um, and so I'm like, do I have it? Like, my stomach hurts. Like, what's going on? But yes, I do feel that like it might be inevitable if if there was some kind of connection in my family. Um, have you felt like clots in your legs or like has because like your
no,
legs get
not like
sore, but
physically.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Not physically. It's just more like, like sometimes if someone's like close to you, like they're like touching your, like not touching your forehead, but it's close and it like tingles. And it's just because you're like,
Mm.
your mind is there. So it causes
Yeah.
sensation. So it's
Yeah.
just sometimes it's like, oh, like I'm like so still, and then I think about my legs, and then it just like I get a sensation, but it's not like
Uh-huh.
anything is actually happening. It's more of like
Yeah.
the mental like anxiety around it. Yeah.
I mean, you were asking Christina about have you heard of somebody else and then
Mm.
has it brought you anxiety? But I feel like for me, it's like myself. So I feel like this leads
Mm.
to
Mm.
Icha,
Okay,
which
perfect.
leads to Icha nicely.
All
So
right,
let's
cool.
just go
Let's do
right on
that.
in.
Gotta eat chat.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about now health scares, right?
Like actual health
Um,
scares, because we were just
yeah,
talking
like
about like
actual health.
anxiety. Yeah.
Exactly, like actual health scares that we've had, and like this is such an interest. Oh, say interesting one more time.
Interesting.
But this is like a very odd, I will say, uh, thing for me because again, like I was saying in Ilcha, like sometimes I just feel so invincible, and I think many people can relate to, like especially when you're young, like in your 20s, whatever, like you feel invincible, but then I actually had a pretty big scare a few years ago, and I think you two know about it, but I'll share. So, back in 2020, so this was like right at the beginning of like lockdown, basically, or yeah, like sort of right at the beginning of lockdown, I just had like extreme like bloating and like kind of like pain in my lower abdomen. And so like at first I was like, "Oh my god, I'm pregnant. This is bad. Like what are we going to do?" Just to provide a little bit of background and maybe a little TMI, but it's okay. This is a safe space. My periods are like very irregular. So like anything that has to do with like my time of the month, it's always it comes pretty randomly. And it's always just kind of been pretty mysterious down there.
Mhm.
So with things like a lot of bloating and pain and cramps and all of these things that come with my periods. And so like when I had that extreme bloating, I got really concerned because one day I was laying down and I was in my mom's room at the time, and I was like laying down and my mom and I were like doing like sit-ups or something. And then like when I was laying down, you could tell like my stomach just went from like the top of my stomach was like flat to like this crazy bump in the
Mm.
lower in my lower stomach, like more than the usual tompe that I have, right? And so so
I
I was
remember you
like,
sent
oh
me
my
a
gosh.
photo and it legit looked like you
Yeah.
were pregnant. Yeah. Lying down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So crazy. And so anyway, there was like enough pain where I was like, okay, I think I need to go to the ER. So I go to the ER, they do a scan, and there is this literal melon sized like mass in my stomach, like a melon, like a whole ass cantaloupe. Right. And so it looked like it was kind of attached to like my left ovary. And so there
Mm.
was like, we did emergency surgery and we went ahead and removed it because it was so large. And at the time when they had scanned me, everything looked pretty good. So like medically, I think clinically, when you find a mass in your body, if it's like perfectly round and they don't see anything inside of it, it's like it's probably just water or like fluids or whatever. It's like pretty benign. So that was kind of like the messaging I was receiving at the time. We do the surgery, it goes well, and then once they removed the mass, they biopsy the mass.
Mhm.
And so they biopsied the mass, and then the results came back, and it was what they were calling like a borderline tumor. So it's not nothing. So like it's not cancer, but it's not cancer. So
Mm.
it's kind of like it had certain characteristics of like malignancy, basically. It's like something that's
Mm.
not good. And so at the time, we obviously had removed it, and so that's fine. Obviously didn't spread anywhere. And then now it's actually there's like something that's kind of grown back in its place. but it's still
Mm.
really small. And I've just kind of been we've been monitoring it every 3 to 6 months. I get scans and blood work just to make sure that things are normal and regular. Like, I mean, it's still an ongoing situation. But it's like one of those things where you're like, oh, it's just a little bloating. Like I feel like all women have some sort of bloating at some point in their cycle, right?
Mm.
Or if you eat something that's like not that doesn't fit with you, you have a little bloating or whatever. And then like the second phase is like, oh, there's something inside, and it's like, oh, that's scary, but like, oh, it's probably nothing. They say it's fine, it's nothing. And then like the third piece is like, oh wait, but it's actually could be something.
Yeah.
So I think like that's kind of the part where like my anxieties sometimes, like if I feel like, Christina, to your point, like if I feel like a little tinge, I'm like, wait a second. And that's because I felt tinges, right, quote unquote tinges before, and then they kind of turned out to be something more than
Mm.
maybe just like a quick little thing.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I think that's definitely like my biggest health scare to date, and like obviously something that I'm still
Going
dealing with.
through. Yeah.
Yeah. But I will share like a silver lining that one of my doctors told
Hmm.
me, which I mean,
Interesting.
it's
Oh, shit, I
it's
said
not that
interesting.
great.
Was that, did I hear
um,
interesting?
Mhm.
is that like she told me, she was like, well, the silver lining is that you're probably not going to die from ovarian cancer. Because ovarian cancer and like cervical cancer and cancers of the female reproductive system, they are like what they call silent killers, because the symptoms that
Oh.
arise
Mm.
are so like normal for women. Like you get some bloating, or you get a little bit of indigestion, or you get a little spotting, like things that happen to us all the time. And then, most women don't check until there's something really wrong, like years and years down the line. And then by then it's too late. And
Mm.
so, I'm
Because you're
getting tested
checking
every
so
3 to 6
frequently.
months.
Yeah, I see.
Exactly. So also a PSA, I think when around 30s or more, it's always nice to like do checkups.
Dude, I need to go to the doctor. I haven't been in
Yeah.
ages. Oh my God.
Yes. Yes, for sure. So I think it's a good thing to always check up on
Mhm.
yourselves.
Mhm.
Woo! Okay.
Oh,
Well,
that's like so
that's
much to have to deal with, like just on top of just aging in general, and then like going through
life in
like
general.
regular women stuff. Yeah, and then like life and work, and you've been like moving as well, like going through so much stuff. I
Yeah, yeah. But
can't
I also
believe.
think that's why the older I get, the more I'm like, women are fucking superheroes.
Mm,
Like
Mm.
they're like,
mhm.
we're like literally bleeding from our vaginas, but like on time to a meeting, or like
Yeah,
we're bleeding from our vaginas and we're running errands because we needed, like whatever it
yeah.
is, and it's just wild. Just
Do you find that
we're
you
awesome.
kind of do you like have to compartmentalize and stuff when as you're like as you've been dealing with this?
Yeah. I mean, what's I won't use the I word here. What is kind of obvious for me is it's almost like I have to not compartmentalize, because I'm so used to
Oh,
compartmentalizing, just like as a woman, as an Asian American, as a minority, whatever, like all of these things. Like I think women are so used to like disassociating or compartmentalizing, or trying to put things into buckets so that they can live, right? And so I almost have to like force myself to not put things in buckets and like really understand what's happening, or like what needs to happen next. And I
mm.
also feel like Sean does a really good job of like being that for me, because he's such a hypochondriac.
Oh, Sean.
And I'm not. I'm like the opposite of one. And so
Mm.
like And
So he's the one who's
so,
like, "Hey, it's like, is that
yeah.
okay? Like, do we need to go
Yeah,
check?"
what's the follow-up?
Aw.
Exactly, exactly. So
Oh.
it works out really well.
I just want to say that I'm glad that it wasn't something that was malignant and that you're healthy for the most part, right? And that it's so hard to I think like nowadays it's so hard to be like 100% healthy, especially like when kids are born, there's like more illnesses and all this like environmental factors that affect like our health. But I'm really glad that like for the most part, like you have access to like the right resources and that you're able to like enjoy your life for the most part even though there's like some that like there's like that one thing in your head that like you have to think about where it's like you have to tend to it, you have to like do the follow-ups, you have to like deal with something else on top of every like what Christina was saying, like on top of everything else that you have to deal with. But I'm so grateful that you're like not having to deal with it in like a larger capacity, even though it probably
Mhm.
Yeah.
sucks to have to deal with it in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm actually thinking about like, I'm thinking just if I'm thinking positively, I'm thinking about even just like being able to share it here, like on this
Mhm.
episode. We're not a big podcast yet, right?
Yet.
Yet. We're not big
Yes.
yet. We're not that big yet. But even if like one person hears this and then says like, oh, like I've been feeling odd, or like, oh, I should go get a checkup, like, I think there's something to that because I know personally, like, growing up, we didn't just go to the hospital, like, you're like, put a band aid on it. It's fine. You're not going to die.
Drink some
I mean, there's many
tea or
reasons. Yeah,
something.
drink some tea. Exactly. Bring the needle, poke your
Mhm.
finger, like
Mhm.
those types of things, which I mean, I see the validity and the goodness in that, but also like we're just not used to going to the hospital, getting checkups, like things like that. At least for me, as growing up like Korean American and with Korean parents, and so yeah, I think like if there's just one more reminder to not listen to your mom, just kidding. Don't listen to your parents and actually go get a checkup. Yeah, I think like that's like part of I think the silver lining too.
Mm.
Mm.
Cheers to that. Let's
Cheers.
take care of ourselves. Let's, check what's going on. For our round 3, we've arrived at samcha, our first samcha of season 3. First round 3 of season 3. How do you just kind of cope with all of this, this fear or these anxieties that we have? And obviously it's like health anxieties. It can kind of also kind of connect to fears or anxieties about death and dying. What do you do to cope with it? Do you do anything or
Do
do you
you
just not
cope?
even think about it?
I oddly don't have like a ton of fear around like my own death. For some reason, I mean, it probably has to do with like, it honestly probably has to do half with feeling quote unquote invincible sometimes. Or like feeling like it's just an inevitability no matter what, at any point, at any time. You hope that it's later in life, but you kind of know that it's coming, and so like, why stress over it now, kind of a thing. So yeah, I oddly don't have a fear around it for myself, but I definitely like as a self-proclaimed empath, like I definitely feel like there's always like really deep like sadness and grief over like other
Mm.
people's death, or like my friends' family, or like even when I see like a YouTube channel and someone like announces that like their spouse passed away or like their dog passed away. Oh my God, don't even get me started with animal videos, but like that kind of thing. So I have like I don't even know how to cope there.
Mm.
But I think ways, like a way to consider coping with the fear of death, or like the fear of loss, the fear of anxiety, all of these things would like probably just be to talk about it. I think just talking about it more. I feel like not a lot of people talk about death because it's kind of a downer. It's sad. It's a lot. It's very deep. But then also like I think when you're around it, or when you talk about it freely, when you are open to the idea of conversation around it, like that kind of makes it ubiquitous and,
Yeah.
kind of normal. So I guess like basically just do what we're doing.
Just do
Just
exactly what we
tooting
do.
our own horn. Yeah, just like
Yeah,
talking about it and having conversations about it,
Yeah.
I think.
I
yeah.
agree. Because even just like talking about it right now, I had not quite an epiphany because it's not like that deep, but when we're talking about like compartmentalizing things and you were like, I actually don't really, and I need to work on not do like, I need to work to not do that. I feel like that's good because when we do compartmentalize, it's like that means you put all your focus and energy on one thing and you're just like completely forgetting about, in this case, your health, however valid or whatever your anxieties are about it, like, but if you're
Mm,
like separating it completely, it's like you got to think about yourself as a whole. So that's like kind of what I'm realizing. I don't think that I was not doing that necessarily, like I don't think I was doing the opposite of that, but I don't think I've been so like super intentional about like thinking about all the aspects of my life together as one. So that's a nice little takeaway for me.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I think like the last time I heavily thought about death was like when I was younger. Death just seems so much scarier when I was younger, but now it's like happening more frequently as I like meet more people, and the people that I know are getting older, and my grandparents like they're all not here anymore. It's just like learning how to deal with it one by one in terms of like other people. But then like when it comes to like myself, I'm like, I always think like something random can happen and I can just die right away. And
Mhm.
so,
Yeah.
like, coping in my fashion is like, okay, well, what happens after I die? Like, who's going to have access to all of like my accounts, and who's gonna um, like who's gonna take my money, and like do I have to write a will now, and setting up life insurance, and what else? It's like, are they gonna sell all my stuff, and who's gonna read my diaries? Like, these are the things that I think about, where it's like dealing with the next steps so that I don't have to like burden other people with my death. But then at the same time, it's like if that does happen, I think about what's lost through that and making life count, especially like with the people who I know aren't going to be around as long as I will be, like if everything goes well. So when I'm like hanging out, like in Korea, I'm hanging out with a lot of older folks, and they talk about death more casually. They're like, when it happens, it happens, because they're expecting it. But at the same time, like I haven't like anticipated their death yet, but in the encounters that we do have, it's like how can we like utilize this time in a way where I'm like more present, and also like tuning into their perspectives on like a life well lived, or what they hope for in their remaining time. But yes, I like agree with both of you that like it's good to talk about it, and it's like good to like resurface it from like that part of my brain that like the like part of my brain that I stored like ideas of death in, that like I don't want to like go into the black hole or like the abyss. I heard that like walking in cemeteries is like a nice little like meditative practice.
I almost said the I word right now.
Interesting. I'll say it for you.
Let's do
Interesting.
it
That
just
is
to take it.
interesting.
Hmm.
Mm,
That was like kind of all over the place, but it's like
no.
been like a central theme like in my 30s more than it was
Yeah.
in my 20s, and I'm sure it's going to be more prevalent in my 40s too.
It's kind of overwhelming to think about like making everything count or making life count. Like I totally agree with you, but it's like, oh, then when you really think about it, it's like, oh, like, you know, we like Christine and I both live like far from our families since we're in New York and our
Mm.
families are in LA, and it's like, oh, like is that the right thing then? And like, but again, there's like many aspects of our lives that we're balancing here. Yeah, it's like just sometimes I'm getting like an existential crisis right now thinking about it.
But
You're
it's really
doing your
good. I
best.
Yeah,
think
a good
You're doing your
yeah,
existential
best.
you
crisis. Yeah,
yes, yes.
yeah.
And it's one of those things where yeah, exactly. You having that like existential crisis or having those thoughts is and having them now is so much better than you never having them at all.
Yeah.
Um and so like thinking about all of these things, it'll probably shape the next, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years from now. Like that's kind of like what it'll shape. So
Mhm.
all positives there.
Oh.
Wow, is this episode 1?
Wow, okay.
It's so deep. I hope everyone is drinking something with alcohol in it.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
healthy.
I know. Oh my god.
It's all about
In
balance, you know?
moderation. Yeah,
Mhm.
balance and moderation.
Mhm.
Hmm.
In moderation.
Do you guys think that like death has been more prevalent too, like in your 30s versus like in your 20s? Or do you think that
Mm.
it's just been like, because I know that like we've all like experienced loss recently, but we've also experienced loss in our 20s. How do you kind of view loss and death differently versus your
Mm.
20s and 30s?
I don't know that it's changed that much. Just since the first death I experienced was when I was like in kindergarten when my grandma passed away. And so it's like
Mm,
it's kind of always been like there, but then I think the thing that has changed is a little connected to what Megan was saying earlier, but like when I think about like Dane dying or like I think
mm-hmm.
about like people close to me passing away, especially if it's like it's not a from natural causes, like not from age, that has like changed a lot, or that has become something new in my 30s, and especially just with like so gun violence and like all these
Mm,
crazy things happening. Like you said, Christine, it's like anything can happen any day to like to you or me or any of us. So I
yeah.
think that's become like more prominent for sure.
And I wonder if it's like a result of, obviously, like as we grow older, we like our relationships to people and like our surroundings, I think, become like a little bit deeper. Like it's not just like, oh yeah, I go to the same school as you and now we're friends. It's like, relationships that you've been cultivating for years. Whether that be like with your partner or platonic or whatever. And so it's almost like there's more to lose. So
Yeah.
then you start feeling like, oh shit, if I do lose this person, or this cohort of people or whatever,
Mhm.
then there's more there.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
think when I was younger and I experienced loss, it was like it felt like at the time it hit me so much harder because it was just like I'm so young and like this is so new and like I don't know what's going on. As I'm older, like those things they still affect me, but like not as strongly. But then it's like, but you have those like deeper connections with people. So like that's where it affects you, not like the death itself or like the idea of
Mm.
death itself.
Gotta make it count. Check in on your
I think we
body.
should,
Oh
obviously, do.
God.
This is like a crazy question, but what would you want your funeral to be like?
Hmm.
I mean, I can answer for Christine. There's the disco ball is gonna come down.
Yeah. Honestly, I think I lived a pretty good life. If things were to just like something happen and God was like, you're gonna die tomorrow, I would want everyone to know that I lived a really, really wonderful and great life. And so that I think should be celebrated. Though it kind of sucks that
Yeah.
like I couldn't see you guys and like you're like we couldn't like grow old together, but at least you'll remember me in like a disco ball kind of fashion, like with blonde hair and all of that. So that's exactly you. I mean, even when I'm like 80, I would want disco balls.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you
Yeah.
guys?
Oh,
Is that a crazy question, or do you just like
no, I just
No,
haven't really
okay?
no.
thought about it. But like, I don't know. I feel like I would say like, yeah, I want people to just like celebrate and like be happy, like have good food, like that kind of thing. Is that gonna happen? I don't know. I guess I need to write it down.
Just let us
I mean, if
know.
you tell us, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not gonna
Oh
die at
my
the same time.
god.
Right? Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Sometimes you just have to laugh about heavy things, right? That helps.
Yes.
Yeah, really. Really. Um yeah, I think it would just like, I think, when you think of a classic funeral, it's like it's really sad, it's really dark, everyone's wearing black, yes, you are recognizing someone's life, but it really is about their death. But then, like I've been hearing these terms, I've been hearing like celebration of life, right? Like instead of calling it a funeral, it's just like a celebration of their life. And it's just like another time for like the people in your life to come together and just like celebrate you as a human. And it's not even about like what you did or like all the things you gave back to the world. I mean, obviously those things are amazing, and like if you can get to that point in your life, that's great. But I think just to like acknowledge and celebrate like this person's being, I feel like that's really nice. So like if I were to die early or late or wherever, whatever, like I think that's definitely something, just like a celebration of life rather than it being like, oh,
Yeah.
this person's funeral.
And a lot of wine for you.
Please.
Lots of wine.
You guys know.
We got it. We
There
know
better
we
be
know,
in abundance.
we know
Megan's
the
gonna
kind of
come
wine you
back.
like. Is that a juicy
No.
red wine there that I see?
Why is that
Chilled?
not a Magnum?
Literally be like, oh, excuse
Oh
me.
my God. I don't know whether to cry or laugh. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Just visualizing it helps. It's I don't know. I don't want to think about it, but it's also like when you think about it, it's like okay, like at least we know what that person wanted. We know what to anticipate,
Yeah.
and
It's like it'll just be an opportunity for us to throw a really fun party. So we'll like think of it that way,
yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah.
and then we'll come back. We'll come back to who I don't know. Like it's gonna happen eventually, right? Like someone's gonna
Yeah.
die here. I don't like to think about.
We're all
that,
gonna
but
die here.
We're all gonna die.
But someone's gonna die first.
Just
yes.
somebody's gonna die
Oh,
first. So I
God.
think that like in the way that we celebrate it, it should be like like a big
In
party,
honor.
as you said, in
Mhm.
honor, and in honor to throw you a party, and then come back every year and remember, not every year, maybe like every month or something, and we'll do samcha
Every
from
day.
the grave.
What the
Okay, you guys.
Going
need,
off
like,
the rails, you guys. It's
we need
like
like a photo of like 3 gravestones with podcast mics doing samcha from the grave.
Oh my God.
yeah.
All right. Anyway.
Anyways,
I think that is the
That
end
was
of this
interesting.
episode. Interesting. Cheers.
Interesting.
All right. So, yeah, if you made it through all of that, please go follow us and find us online everywhere at Samcha Podcast, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. Go and listen to us wherever you're listening to your podcast now, and tell your friends because we would love to welcome them. Yay!
Yay! And remember, guys, every Wednesday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be releasing
Yes.
some juicy, some fun, real nuggets of wisdom, if we do say so ourselves.
Yes. We love ourselves, and clearly.
Yeah, and so should you.
All right, bye.